So when you think of a pallet, what comes to mind? Probably just a simple stack of wood, right? But in the world of logistics, it's so much more than that. It's a critical asset with its own entire life cycle. So how long does that life really last? Well, the answer is way more complex and honestly, more interesting than you'd think. Let's dive into the secret life of this warehouse workhorse.
Okay, so for your average wooden pallet, doing its thing under normal warehouse conditions, this is pretty much the standard lifespan. We're talking 3 to 5 years of being loaded up, lifted, shipped out, and stacked high. It does its job, and then it's done. But that is definitely not the whole story. Because get this, with the right care, that same pallet could last for a decade, maybe even longer. So the real question is, what separates a 3-year pallet from a 10-year one? How do you possibly bridge that 7-year gap? That's exactly what we're going to break down.
We're going to follow the entire journey of a pallet from start to finish. First, we'll look at that average lifespan to set the scene. Then, we'll go right back to its birth and the huge choice of material. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of its daily job and then see what it takes to give it a tune-up to keep it going. And finally, we'll uncover its pretty surprising afterlife. So, let's circle back to that 3 to 5 year baseline. Now, of course, the build quality matters a lot, but it turns out the biggest factors that decide if a pallet makes it are how it's handled and, most importantly, how it's stored every single day. You see, every pallet story begins with one crucial choice. What is it made of? That single decision basically sets the stage for its entire life, defining its strengths, its weaknesses, and what kind of job it's going to be perfect for. Now, what's really fascinating here are the trade-offs. Wood is the go-to for a reason. It's cheap and you can patch it up pretty easily. But man, it really hates moisture. Plastic? It completely solves that moisture problem, which is awesome for things like food or medicine, but it costs more. And if it breaks, good luck fixing it. And then you've got metal, the heavyweight champion. It's ridiculously durable and can hold massive loads, but it's so heavy and expensive that you only see it in really specialized jobs. And this choice of material has a huge ripple effect that goes way beyond the warehouse floor. I mean, choosing wood from certified sustainable forests or using recycled plastics, that's not just for show. It's a strategic move that lines up with what everyone wants now, a supply chain that's responsible and transparent. All right, so the pallet's been built. Now it's time to get to work. And let me tell you, the warehouse is not a gentle place. Every single day, a pallet faces a barrage of hazards that can just dramatically shorten its life. And these are a pallet's biggest enemies. A forklift operator in a hurry can easily crack a board. Piling on too much weight puts insane stress on the whole thing, causing it to buckle, turning a useful asset into a real danger. And then there's moisture. It's like the silent killer. It leads to warped wood, mold, and rot, slowly eating away at the pallet's strength. This quote just nails it. It says it all, really. More than forklift bumps, more than heavy loads, simply where a pallet lives when it's not being used can add years to its life. Leaving it outside versus keeping it covered, that's often the difference right there. Okay, so we know all the dangers, but how can we actually fight back? Well, this brings us to the maintenance phase, the tune-up. This is how a pallet can actually reach that 10-year potential we were talking about earlier. It really boils down to 3 simple but super powerful pillars: checking on them all the time, storing them the right way, and making sure the whole team is trained up. You get these 3 things right, and you're well on your way to a 10-year pallet. Consistent inspections aren't just about spotting a giant, obvious crack. It's about being proactive, looking for those tiny hairline fractures, a loose nail, or a weak corner. Catching that little stuff early stops a massive failure later on when that pallet is holding thousands of pounds of product. And this shows that storage point perfectly. The difference is just night and day. A covered, dry, ventilated space for pallets are always being rotated into use. That's the dream. The worst-case scenario? Leaving them in a soggy, exposed pile out in the yard. One approach treats them like a long-term asset, the other like disposable trash. But hey, even the most pampered pallet eventually has to retire. But that doesn't mean it's the end of its story. Not at all. In today's world, this is just the beginning of its next chapter. I mean, just look at this. For a wooden pallet, retirement is a busy time. It can be refurbished and sent right back out to work. Its good boards can be salvaged for repairs, or it can be shredded into mulch, animal bedding, or even biofuel. Almost nothing goes to waste. It's so cool. And this isn't just for wood either. Plastic and metal pallets, they get melted down to get that raw material back, ready to make new stuff. It closes the loop.
And for any pallet that's still in decent shape, it can get a whole new life with nonprofits or become the star of some DIYer's next big project.
So all of this brings us to the final and most important question. This isn't just about wood or plastic. It's about your mindset. How you answer this question, that's what determines whether your pallets last 3 years or 10. And that choice, ultimately, is yours.